Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we are taking a look at the Rhode Island, potentially the best cruiser in the game, being a battleship. I'm not sure if I quite believe that or not, but I can make the argument for it. This ship is absolutely crazy, and it's back in the Summer Festival with these Sunset bundles that will be opening up in a couple of days. So direct doubloon purchase only, no random bundles, gambling mechanic shenanigans, nothing like that, which I really like to see. However, it is still a very expensive ship. 31,300 doubloons is a lot to ask, and is more notably than Rhode Island B was last Black Friday. Now, there's no guarantee they're going to be bringing back Rhode Island B next Black Friday, but given that in past Black Friday events, when they've released new B variant ships in previous years, they typically have brought those back. The only one I'm thinking of that did not come back was the Smolensk B. Pretty sure that one didn't actually return, but that was an auction, seemed a little bit special in that regard. And it was 26,000 doubloons in Black Friday. So it's more money here. But if you did miss out on Rhode Island, this is an opportunity to get it if you're unwilling to wait for Black Friday. So Rhode Island, the best cruiser in the game, eh? Well, what's the argument for it? We got a lot of DPM. 163,000 HE DPM isn't too bad. Something like a Hindenburg has 183k. Moskva has only 161k. And notably, Rhode Island is also faster than a lot of cruisers. With this engine boost up and brisk, you're getting well over 40 knots. So you got decent enough DPM for a tier 10 cruiser. You got more than enough speed for a tier 10 cruiser to get around the map. Notice how I'm already caught up with my destroyers, even though I was playing in the very corner of the map. It's not a situation where Rhode Island, like other battleships, gets caught out by being mispositioned. The ship can always get into the correct position. We also get a radar. Yes, just a 9-kilometer radar here, but that is extremely useful that most battleships do not get access to. Combining that with our DPM on our main guns, the destroyer damage is just off the charts. Battle impact wise, as far as battleships go, this ship is among the best for the battleship class, rivaling that of cruisers. Although, it still smashes like a battleship when you catch those broadsides. Wow, battle cruiser dispersion here helps out a lot, especially with how fast this ship reloads. We also just have very, very good armor. It looks like a Georgia. It's not quite Georgia armor. Our bow and stern are fully overmatchable. It's not 32 up there. I believe it's 25. So overmatchable, but we still get the 38 mil upper belt and deck armor. Large superstructure that can be vulnerable to getting farmed down. Fast cooldown heals. It's tankier than a cruiser. It's not the tankiest battleship in the game, but considering I'm comparing it to cruisers here, it's a very, very tanky ship relative to cruisers, which are a little bit more comparable directly in DPM and their battle impact, thanks to something like this radar here. Rhode Island really seems to fit that middle ground in between battleships and cruisers. It's not a pure cruiser, I know, but if you're a battle cruiser enjoyer, if you're someone who loves A-gear for some reason, I would just put forward that Rhode Island is the best battle cruiser in the entire game. It is so easy to play this ship as that HE spammer from range and then push up when you get the opportunity to, like we're about to in this game. When you find the opportunity to push, find the broadsides, find the flanks, swap over to the armor piercing, and do a ton of damage. Also, the most important thing we can do as a radar cruiser, if we're going down that line, is pushing up to islands that are next to cap zones and then just radaring out the enemy destroyers. This is something you can do to just win flanks outright. And Rhode Island having that without having to worry about being constantly overmatched everywhere by all the battleships. Yeah, the bow and stern can get overmatched. It's a large superstructure, but in no way is Rhode Island comparable to like a Des Moines as far as how much you have to worry about enemy battleship fire. We didn't quite have the right ammo type there, but it didn't matter. We still nearly hit that Holland for 10k with that armor piercing. That is how powerful the dispersion is on this ship. Secondaries chipping in damage as well anytime that radar is going off. There's a lot of damage into these destroyers. Holland tries to go dark. Our HE loads in time. And that's 8 hit. Guys, this ship is a battleship. We're better than a cruiser as far as pushing in and taking out the destroyers. Oh, it's a Kremlin shot. We could just shrug it off. This ship is absolutely incredibly powerful when you play it as that cruiser or battle cruiser role. There are weaknesses to this ship. It legitimately does die very quickly if you try to just play it as a normal mid-range tank battleship, that sort of thing on a flank. It just simply cannot fill that role. It can for very brief periods of times, like some of the battle cruisers can, but not as a fully focused ship, right? We need to be using island cover to isolate fights. In this case, trying to keep the Kremlin from being able to shoot us while we radar out the remaining destroyer on this flank. Our friendly destroyer can smoke up and still get damage in on this tromp while we do the spotting for the team here. Though we do drift out, and that vulnerable bow comes back to bite us against this Kremlin shot. It is a somewhat vulnerable citadel. I don't know how to really talk about citadels these days. Compared to what we used to get way back in the day, it's not a very vulnerable citadel at all. But compared to very modern designs where the citadels are submerged below water and impossible to hit, it's a little more vulnerable than that. Broadside Kremlin, timing our push, like I mentioned, with this absurd engine boost is very, very good. 15% engine boost feels great. Though now we are brawling a Schlieffen, which is not where this ship shines. I want you to notice how much damage we are going to eat from this Schlieffen when we fully angle to him. I have to risk turning away here because he's just going to torp us if we get too close. And thankfully we're fast enough that if he's leading for gray line, we should be able to dodge these torpedoes. But look at this damage ramp up as soon as my stern is showing to the Schlieffen here. He's going to get some overmatch damage, or at least some damage into our superstructure. And the secondaries are all full penning. None of them are shattering. We need to show a little more broadside. And then suddenly the damage drops off again. You have to watch out in a brawl. Understandably so. But nobody's really playing this ship trying to brawl a Schlieffen seriously, right? It's only me that's dumb enough to do that potentially. Though, hold on. Do we live this? Perhaps 20 seconds till our heel. We get behind the island. It's just a Libertad after us. And crucially, the other element of Rhode Island that puts it more towards this cruiser category is its concealment. Yes, we are actually going to go dark here. Libertad is 12.4 kilometers away from us, and we're just undetected. We'll get to our heel, and we do end up living this. 12.3 kilometer detect, you get amazing HE. The DPM is in between a Moskva and a Hindenburg, but we're on a battleship hull here with a radar still. The fire chance hasn't been massively nerfed on this ship. It's still a 31% fire chance. You get 10.1 fires per minute. That's like Zhao levels of fires per minute on ships. So very consistent at lighting fires. You get 59 millimeters of pen. It's great to just spam HE out of a Rhode Island until you get the perfect opportunity with that armor piercing. It feels like a battle cruiser, and in some ways, I think better than even just a normal cruiser at a farming role, while also having near battleship armor, incredible AP in its back pocket, and a radar on top. I'm probably repeating myself at this point, but I think you get the picture. Rhode Island is an incredibly powerful battleship. Makes sense then, I guess, why they think they can charge so much money for this ship. It's unfortunate that something so powerful and, let's be honest, very unique in its playstyle is locked behind such a massive paywall. If you're interested in free-to-play options, I guess there's the new pan-European battleship line going towards Thor. That also gets a radar. Very, very few ships get radars as far as the battleship class is concerned. That is a 10-kilometer radar. It doesn't last as long, only 25 seconds, where Rhode Island's last for 40 seconds, but only 9 kilometers as a bit of a balancing factor. Thor is also crazy fast with its absurd engine boost, 25% engine boost on that one. Doesn't last as long, of course. Rhode Island gets multiple consumables, where with Thor, you just have a total usage time one. Yeah, that AP is very consistent at these sorts of ranges. If you can pen, the AP is very, very, very good. I think Thor, though, lacks the guns, okay? I think that is the downside of Thor. It is a little tankier, I would say, but if you're looking at Rhode Island as a, wow, look at the utility, wow, look at the farming potential, wow, look at the AP when we get the flank going, Thor is going to let you down on the guns a lot in comparison to what we are seeing here. Then we could look at ships that also have fast firing, more HE spam guns, but want to go over to the armor piercing in the right situation. Maybe Mecklenburg, maybe Bourgogne. Those are steel ships, though. That's a hard one to get after. this is a unique ship, okay? This does not play like very many other ships, or at least battleships. If we go over to the cruiser class, suddenly there are more ships that have radars, there are more ships that have faster reloading guns with maybe not battleship level of hard-hitting main guns, but they don't bring everything together like a Rhode Island does. Perhaps Marseille is similar in the HE farming with the ability to swap over to AP in the right scenario. That even gets a reload booster, also gets a speed boost to get around the map quickly, but you don't get a radar there, and it's not got as good of armor. I think Marseille has pretty solid armor, but if we're comparing it to Rhode Island, this ship just has more survivability. We could also look at ships like Moskva or Stalingrad that have the radars, Petro, that sort of thing, but they don't have the speed like Rhode Island does to get around the map, as well as generally not quite as much DPM as a Rhode Island would either. And at that point, we are firmly into playing cruisers and worrying about overmatching battleships, like a Bungo, for example. I think one element I am maybe missing or glossing over here when it comes to playing Rhode Island is that you are taking up a battleship slot. That is a legitimate weakness of this ship. Yeah, we do get an extra radar on our flank, potentially, because we're not taking up a cruiser spot. But we're not a full battleship either. We can't tank for nearly as long as a standard battleship would, like a Montana, for example. If the flank calls for needing a ship on your flank to actually take a few hits from the enemy team, Rhode Island is not going to stand up as well to that. Usually, you will steamroll through a flank fast enough because Rhode Island and its utility can usually do that by killing off the destroyers, finding the flank on the battleships at close range, catching cruisers out with the improved pen angle AP that has great reload and accuracy. But there are still times where Rhode Island will not look quite as good as you are seeing in this video, where you did just want the full tankiness of a battleship, and Rhode Island is not going to quite give you that. It's still pretty solid in that role, though, I'm not gonna lie. That is a minor downside of this ship, and for the most part, if you're playing at these medium ranges, it can soak some battleship fire here and there. And likely the advantages that this ship has, the radar, the DPM, HE, AP, the engine boost to stay with your teammates when you clear out your flank, as we did in this match, right? We're not caught at the back line here. We're even ahead of something like a Bourgogne, which is also pretty quick. We were all the way out on the one line there, finishing up the job on that side. And yet we're still getting through and caught up with our friendly destroyers and cruisers that are pushing towards the remaining enemy ships. Battleships usually aren't going to be doing that. And I really like Rhode Island for that, as well as just the general consistency that these guns are going to be bringing. You've seen it throughout this video, but generally I am looking to push up and aggressively take those fights in the early game, helping on those destroyer engagements. We can take a few hits, unlike a lot of these radar cruisers that if they get caught open water, trying to get up to these very aggressive island positions around caps, Rhode Island can take a few hits getting there, and getting that radar on early, the damage output from the guns into a DD engagement early, can easily swing a battle. And that's what I'm always looking to do, though I am always looking to do that with island cover that lets me not continuously soak fire. If it's an open water flank, open water cap, I'm going to be much more careful. It's always about finding those islands as sort of checkpoints that allow me to settle down, recover some HP, not be the primary focus for everyone on that half of the map, which is typically going to happen. People know about this ship. They know it's a strong ship. They know it has radar and it's going to munch through their destroyers, so they want to take it out, understandably. So you have to be ready for that, and even though you're not going to get spotted that quickly with 12.3 kilometer detect, when you do, you're likely going to be closer to the enemy team and liable to take a lot more damage. Rhode Island is very, very powerful, guys, but when I see it in my randoms queue, I'm not always the most afraid of it because I know that if misplayed, this ship will die very, very quickly. Yeah, we do have fast cooldown on that heal, but plenty of Rhode Islands are kind of one and done on their heals as they play too aggressive, trying to get that radar on early, not realizing that they're pushing into so much of a crossfire without any cover, and they end up losing their ship. As always, it's going to be up to you whether or not this ship is worth it for yourself. It's a lot of money, 31,300 doubloons is not cheap, and I am sure I have done a terrible job of dissuading you if you're on the fence. There's just not a lot I can say negative about the Rhode Island. It's not a full battleship on the guns. The AP sometimes lets me down compared to regular battleships, shells, which will Citadel more often at range, but if you go in not expecting that and you know I'm shooting HE until I get the perfect opportunity at mid and close range on battleship, and then into cruisers, if they give you broadside, you can smash them with the AP. You're gonna have a great time with this ship. It's really just, if you misplay it, thinking it's a full-on battleship is really the only downside when it is more of that battle cruiser role. As for the build that I was running on, it looked a little something like this, trying to get our consumables back quicker. I love this 2-pointer skill. We want to swap between AP and HE all the time, so taking gun feeder, of course. And I am greedy enough, yes, to even run a secondary build here. Taking these commander points allows me to get 11.3 kilometer range, and these are just full Georgia secondaries. So they're not quite as good as Ohio, little less DPM, much worse fire chance, but they're still very good and synergize quite well with that, trying to get in range to deal with those destroyers and using that radar. However, if you're finding yourself dying too quickly, the secondaries aren't that much damage, okay? It's really about the main gun. So go over to maybe fire prevention and basic survivability or improved repair party readiness instead of these two. Might even be better to just run Furious straight up, to use the guns more often. But I enjoy a good brawl, and the secondaries are a fun part of that. As for the upgrades here, we're looking at boosting our engine boost as much as possible. 234 seconds is absolutely ridiculous uptime for 15% here, and a very fast cooldown time. Now, why not just buff the radar? Well, a 40-second radar at 9 kilometers, if the enemy ship is still within 9 kilometers by 40 seconds, it should be dead. If it's a destroyer, it should be dead already, or it's left 9 kilometers away from your ship is usually what happens. So that's why I'm not running the extra duration. Sometimes that is a downside of this ship, or at least this build. Sometimes I do regret that, but for the most part, I do enjoy the engine boost more. And I am running damage control party mod 1 because 30 seconds of immunity from relighting fires is just hilarious when those destroyers are thinking, this battleship damage controlled, I can get the permafires on them and then I'll go dark. Nah, bro, I got 30 seconds before you can start having a fire again. Meanwhile, we're chunking with those main guns. That's not always happening, but I find that to be quite useful. But here is the armor, okay? 27, I have to amend this video. Why did I think it was 25? Probably because most of the stuff we fight is overmatching this anyway. There's very little that doesn't overmatch 27, but would overmatch 25. It's like Bourgogne, I guess. There's a few 380mm gun battleships at this tier. Colombo doesn't count because it's just firing sap. It does, okay? But 27 is not good armor at this tier, and it allows us to get citadeled at times. Though, notably, this citadel, it's just direct waterline, okay? This is just purely a waterline citadel. Compared to what we see in the old days, of which I prefer, Yamato has that gigantic citadel, right? It's huge. I love this sort of design. I think this is great design. Rhode Island having the waterline citadel is very good in comparison, but compared to more modern ships like a Fondator that we just looked at, I mean, that's a submerged citadel. So it seems like this is a just fine armor level if you get caught broadside. Notably, if you do manage to keep this ship mostly angled, not direct bow in, mostly angled, and enemy ships hit you here, you're going to shatter, you're going to bounce a lot. The superstructure eats a lot of damage, you eat a lot of damage through the bow and stern as well at closer ranges. So like I said, not a full battleship. But of the ships that I would consider that battle cruiser class, I do think that Rhode Island is the closest to being that full battleship. You can't fully tank, but it is very, very hard to take this ship down relative to any cruiser in the game for the most part. There is where you'll find Rhode Island, 31,300 doubloons. It's a lot. And there are other good options. We're going to look at Cambridge soon, Grau soon. If you guys force me, I'll run Tsurugi as well. 6-gun battleships are not the most kind to me, but I had an okay time at Incomparable. Maybe Tsurugi does deserve a relook. You can let me know in the comments, but Yeah, Rhode Island is the best ship here by quite a lot, I would say. It's also the most expensive ship here quite a lot. But it's not in gambling bundles, and it's not in an Admiral pack. It's just direct sale and for doubloons at that, which I think is, I mean, this is a low bar to clear because it's still like a couple $100 ship, something like that, $120, $150. It's still very expensive. It's still more expensive than any AAA game or Steam sales if you're a gamer like that, which I certainly am. I try to pay like 30 bucks for a game. I wait for it to go on a big sale. This is very expensive still, is what I'm getting at. So it's up to you, but a very, very powerful battleship. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and have a great rest of your day.